Welcome back. Pete Buttigieg burst onto the Democratic primary scene with a gusher of good press and campaign contributions. But after that impressive start, he did fall back into the second tier of candidates, well behind Joe Biden, Elizabeth Warren, and Bernie Sanders. But at Tuesday's debate, the South Bend mayor tried to regain the initiative with a more aggressive approach.
Well, we heard it tonight, a yes or no question that didn't get a yes or no answer. Your signature, Senator, is to have a plan for everything, except this. I don't need lessons from you on courage, political or personal. You can put an end to endless war without embracing Donald Trump's policy. Will you end the regime change war is the question.
And Mayor Pete Buttigieg joins me now. Welcome back to Meet the Press.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Before I get to the campaign, I want to start with the current situation in northern Syria. You may inherit a situation if you're president where the Turks have this sort of uneasy oversight over northern Syria. The Kurds are a bit displaced. We have multiple nations in with troops in Syria. What do you do? What do you do now? We know what you wouldn't do.
Right.
I understand that. What do you do now?
Well, things are going to evolve in so many different ways that it's hard to gauge the future, except this. We know that we need to promote stability, that we need to stand by our allies, and that there will be legitimate Turkish security concerns that will also be part of the equation. But right now what's happening is the future over there is being decided by everybody but the United States, Russia, Iran, Turkey, and we are nowhere because American leadership has been withdrawn. And the implications of this aren't just the regional security picture in the Middle East, it's the credibility of the United States ourselves. And the first order of business will be to restore U.S. credibility, not just with regard to the Middle East, but globally.
One of the first relationships that might need reorienting is Turkey. Does Turkey belong in NATO?
Well, what we know is that they are not behaving in a way that's consistent with stability. And I think if they continue to behave in this way, there have to be consequences. But right now,
a suspension or kicking out, some form of suspension from NATO, one of those consequences?
Well, right now what we've got to do is engage Turkey as an ally. You know, I served alongside Turkish troops in Afghanistan. That alliance is important, and it's leverage for us to make sure that we use our influence to prevent bad outcomes like the one that Donald Trump green-lighted that they're doing right now. If they don't act like an ally in the long run, that's going to have consequences.
I want to ask you about Afghanistan. Peter Bonner reacted to your debate performance, and he writes this over this headline: Democrats are hypocrites for condemning Trump over Syria. If Trump's unilateral, non-negotiated withdrawal from northern Syria makes it harder for Buttigieg to look America's Afghan allies in the eye, the same might be said of the unilateral, non-negotiated withdrawal that Buttigieg and the other leading Democratic candidates are proposing in Afghanistan itself. Is there a lesson learned, what we're seeing in northern Syria, about the situation in Afghanistan?
Yeah, but the lesson validates my position, because what I've said about Afghanistan is that where we need to get to, and by the way, it will involve negotiation. It's not a unilateral, non-negotiated withdrawal. What we need to do in Afghanistan is get to where we have a light footprint presence of counterterrorism, specialized special operations troops, and whatever intelligence capabilities we need to protect the homeland and no more.
So now, we will always, in your mind, for the foreseeable future, we're going to have some force in Kabul.
The way to end our unending, massive ground troop presence there is to have this other footprint in the medium term. But here's the thing. That's exactly what we had in Syria.
Yeah.
A matter of just a few dozen troops, special operators in just the right places, making it possible to prevent the descent into chaos we're seeing now. So you see, what was withdrawn from Syria is exactly the sort of thing that, if we had it in Afghanistan, would prevent endless war of the scale that we're seeing now.
I'm sure you've heard this, particularly in Iowa, because I've heard this from you. It's going to be ugly no matter when you get out of the Middle East. No matter what you do. We stay in, it's ugly. We get out, it's ugly. There's some voters that sat there and said, you know what, just get out. It's always going to be a mess. What do you say to them that says, you know what, President Trump's getting us out?
What I say is that we need to keep the American people safe. And our policy in the Middle East or anywhere around the world starts with that principle. Now, when it comes to the Middle East, we should acknowledge that, yes, it will be messy for probably as long as I'm alive. And there are some problems that you can solve, and there are some problems you just have to manage. But completely withdrawing from that, from the rest of the world, withdrawing American leadership, saying we're not even going to do anything until after we get attacked and are forced to get involved in some way. That is not the way to end endless war. The way to do it is to stay ahead of these problems, to engage our allies, and to lead an international community to promote stability and peace.
One of the criticisms that you and others have leveled is that the president's not respecting sort of deals that America has made. You know, we're walking away from the Kurds in particular. This part is un-American. How constrained are you going to feel by deals that President Trump cut? Because on one hand, you've got to restore faith among folks around the world that when you cut a deal with America, America will stick by it.
Right.
But if you don't like a deal President Trump cut, what are you going to do?
Make a better deal. But what we're not going to do...
Sounds like President Trump.
No, what President Trump does is wake up in the morning, have a phone call or maybe a tweet, and completely change years or even decades of U.S. policy, surprising his own generals and country in the process. That's not how this works. If we think that there is a commitment, a treaty, or a deal that we can improve on, we go to the table and we make it happen. But the credibility of the United States is something that our lives depend on. And when the president undermines it with things like the action in Syria, that is going to cost us for years and years. We've got to be a country known to keep its word.
Let me move to the debate and the back and forth in particular you had with Senator Warren. You were pretty tough on her and her inability to tell you how she's going to pay for her Medicare for All plan. You've been pretty evasive on how you're paying for yours. You've said it's going to be some cost savings plus corporate tax reform. But you haven't said much after that. What are some details on how you're paying for your Medicare for all who want it?
Sure. So we score it out as $1.5 trillion over that period of time. The vast majority of that can be recovered by rolling back the corporate tax rate cut portion of the Trump tax cuts.
So it would go from what to what?
That'll take care of the $1.4 trillion if we just revert to the pre-Trump level.
So you want to just basically roll back the entire corporate tax cut?
Mm-hmm. And
is that going to be easy? That's easier said than done.
Well, governing is easier said than done. But we have a responsibility to make sure that dollars that have gone to line the pockets of people who didn't even need it are instead going to make sure that the American people can get health care. Now, just to give you a full mathematical answer, that's almost enough to deliver what I say that we need, but there's a little bit more that we're going to recover through the savings to the government from my prescription drug plan, because when we allow the government to negotiate drug prices, that actually leads to a return to the Treasury. So the bigger point here is my plan is paid for. And we have an opportunity to get everybody health care without kicking people off their private plans and without the multi-trillion-dollar hole that appears to be there unexplained in Senator Warren's plan.
Before I let you go, I was curious if you had any reaction to former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton implying that Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard might be a Russian asset.
What I'll say is that I'm not going to get into their dispute. What I will say is that we know right now.
Is it appropriate?
Well, I suppose when you become a private citizen, you can say whatever you want.
I understand that. But she's a sitting member of Congress. She served.
Well, I certainly honor her service. As we saw in the debate, I also have strong disagreements with her on topics like Syria. But the bigger issue here is Russia is working to interfere with our elections right now. And we know a big part of how they're going to do it is exploiting divisions among the American people with their information operations. We've got to become a harder target. And as president, I will make sure, using all of our tools, diplomatic, economic, and security, that there is enough deterrence that Russia would, or any country, would never again calculate that it is in their interest to mess with our democracy.
I just wonder if you're comfortable. I mean, throw a charge out there making her deny it. That's a Trumpian move.
Well, we got to focus on the task at hand right now. And that includes making sure that this presidency comes to an end. That is my focus. That and what happens after this presidency comes to an end.
So you're comfortable with Hillary Clinton's critique of Tulsi Gabbard and how she went about it?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I'm also not going to get in the middle of it because we as a party and as a country have to focus on the future.
Pete Buttigieg, the soon-to-be former mayor of South Bend, right? We got about another
10 more weeks.
About 10 more weeks. Stay safe on the trail. Thanks for coming in.
Good to be with you.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.